Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Sketchy Goichi. I am your host, Roger Andrews, illustrator, artist, graphic designer, content creator, and I've got one question to ask you. Do you want to make money doing art? In other words, do you want to eventually become a professional doing all those little wonderful characters that you've invented from your mind, or you love to create your own comic book and you fancy yourself a visual storyteller? Or you flat out just want to do paintings of portraits or landscapes or anything related to art and you'd like to earn a living doing it? Well, this is the video for you. I've broken it down into several sort of philosophies, if it were, that I think are helpful mindsets it would take to figure out a way to actually make money doing art. So, intrigued? Stay tuned and enjoy.
Sketchy Go Itchy.
Yes, indeed. Let's get exposed. I mean that in the most G-rated way possible. By getting exposed, what I mean is getting exposure. Let's face it, guys. In order to make money at art, or anything that you are skillful in, whether it be art related or not, you absolutely people have to know you exist. So, getting exposed is about getting exposure, which means you absolutely got to put yourself out there. And it's been my experience that some of the best artists I've ever seen in my life, I'm talking about, beautiful renderers of, painted, sketch, ink line, you name it. They don't get the 10th of the amount of income they could earn just simply because they lack the ability to market themselves, or, yes, I'll say it again, to get exposure. So how do you do that? In the past, let's face it, it was much more difficult if you were sort of a struggling artist to get discovered. The avenues in which you could put yourself out there were few and far between, and you really had to really grind to get your name out, to get your art out, to get people to put their eyeballs on what you're doing, and to be able to sell the narrative you're trying to tell with each one of your illustrations or your designs or whatever. It was so difficult, and but let's face it, guys, that barrier for entry is eliminated now. With the advent of social media, in particular Facebook, and then to a much greater degree nowadays, Instagram and YouTube. Let's face it, if you have an art style that is, even if it's not unique, it's something that you own, meaning like it's a style that you can successfully accomplish at a high level, it's marketable, and therefore it's sellable. So I make the distinction between something you own, or to put a finer point on it, meaning like there are some artists who render in a style that is already established. I see lots and lots of similar art on Instagram. Lots of really pretty girl illustrations that are super beautifully rendered, digitally painted. Lots of really cool tech landscapes and lots of great licensed character art, Star Wars characters and and DC characters, and there's so much great art out there, but there are very few people who own an original style. I guess that's the fine point I want to get to. So if you're an artist who has no established track record, let's say, maybe you have an original style, but you have no ability to push it forth. The fact is, you really have no excuse. You go on Instagram and you post the best of your images, and you post them often. And here's another untapped factor. You tell a little story. You have some ability to kind of shape your narrative with your art. Speaking of narrative, this little piece that you're watching unfold before your very eyes was just taken or done for an art prompt. For those who are not familiar, online, particularly on Instagram, someone will float the idea of a word prompt. I know a lot of people have heard of Inktober, and a lot of other people have heard of, May the 4th be with you for Star Wars. And essentially, in some cases, people will put one word, or they'll take an entire month, and each day of the month they'll have an individual word, a prompt. And you're supposed to render that one word and turn it into an illustration or a sketch or something, and you share those. And it's a great way to kind of, getting your art out there, because you're joining a community of people, and they get to see your art and your original or unique take on things. So for this specific sketch, it literally was just, hopefully you can read the word bake in there coming out of the smoke. Oh, by the way, that character is wearing that mask. That was done before the COVID, which is really unusual. I don't know what I was thinking at the time. Anyways, the word bake was a word prompt on my buddy BJ Dell's Facebook group. I think, I'm not even going to butcher it again. I butcher it every single time. But if you look up BJ Dell on, let's face it, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, you'll find a link to all his great content. And he did, an entire month's worth of word prompts, one for each day of the week, all the way throughout the month. And I just so happened to catch it one day, and I was like, I don't know if the first word or one of the first words were bake. And so I did this little sketch to represent bake. It's really all it was to it. But then I shared it in the group on Facebook. Again, I'm going to put a link to that in the notes, so you're not floundering around trying to find it, and I don't want you to have to do more than click on a simple link. But yeah, I basically did this quick sketch, posted it within the group, and I got several people to follow my art just by seeing this little sketch in that group. I hate to say, this is going to sound overly simplistic, but there's really not much more to it than that. Simply getting your stuff out there. It beats not getting your stuff out there. Let's be real. And I think what has to happen is everyone who has that understanding that if you get the exposure, it then leads to people reacting to your art. It then leads to you figuring out a way to monetize it. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a series of these videos, and I'm going to tell you exactly how you can monetize your art. But the first step in any of this, 100%, is to do the art as best to your ability and then get it out there. Get it out on all the social media platforms. Be consistent. Be professional in what you present. Make sure everything is on a high level, and tell the story. Every time you post something, write up a nice story with a bunch of hashtags that'll bring people right back to that particular piece and refer them to some of your other pieces. That's really all there is to it about getting exposure. And to make money at it is a simple matter of, yes, now you have a following. If you have a following, people want commissions, and that is the way to go. Speaking of exposure, check this out. Now, that's clearly somebody who is not shy about exposing themselves. My little daughter, Aria Lee. You've probably seen her in previous videos. Anyways, guys, sketchy goichi, live your moment. Happy sketching, y'all. Please do follow me on all those social media platforms I've mentioned. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And you'll see what I'm talking about. And you'll see the ways to get a little cash. All right, guys. Peace.